Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. You've gotten to see me a lot here lately. We did a Saturday show this past weekend. We did a Wednesday last week. Lots and lots of views, and you might even see us not this Saturday, but in 2 Saturdays. Maybe Nathan will pop up and he'll let us know if there's any news on that front. Working on our After the Lights Go Out episodes with professional athletes, talking about life after pro sports. And if you know, look, folks, if you know a pro athlete, somebody maybe, or even Division I athlete was in a sport like diving or wrestling or something like that, that there's not really a transition into a pro environment, please reach out to us. But joining us today, a man who needs a couple of introductions, just because everybody does, because you wouldn't know who's on the other side of the camera with me if you didn't. We are buying him a ring light, though. Ring light, because he's never done this at night. And that's what makes us special, is because he doesn't come out at night. He specially came and joined us. You know, he's got degrees. He's helping people through their journeys in life, coaching them through it. He's got a background in something I love, some staffing. So joining us, and I didn't even normally ask my guests what city they're in. I didn't even ask him. So I have to tell us here in a minute. But joining us from parts I don't know quite yet, Mr. Mark, and I'm going to butcher Mark's last name because he has one of those names, and y'all know how I am with last names. Mark Aylward. Is it Aylward? Aylward? Aylward?
It's Aylward, like it were spelled A-L-E. Aylward.
Aylward.
Yeah. Hey, Sean.
See, there you go. There's your cheers. Oh, look, there's Nate. Nate, are we doing a show on the 30th? The audience wants to know. But Mark, I appreciate you coming out, bud. We're going to be talking about, he's got a program helping people, coaching them through as we're going through this, some life coaching, some personal coaching. You can find some more information for him on 7pillarsglobal.com. But let's go ahead and get some house cleaning done here real quick. As always, folks, if you're watching the live video, it's over my right shoulder. We got the big board for Sticker and a Cause. If you got something you're supporting, something you believe in, maybe you have your own coaching program. You have something else going on. Whatever it happens to be, you can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, even our email. It's all the Above the Bar podcast. Let me know what you got going on. I'll give you the address where to send that sticker to. Send me out the sticker, and I'll read about you live here on the air. And now let's get to our sponsors. Now, you're kind of in a dark area there, Mark. I don't see any windows. You got any windows where you're at, Mark? I
got big French doors right in front of me that the sun usually pours through. Oh, they got all kinds of windows around the back. So in the daylight, this is actually a good place to shoot. And like I said, I didn't even consider the fact that we were going to do this in the dark. So I just turned all the lights on.
But you know what? Now that you say you got all that light coming through, you would probably love to talk to our sponsors, Budget Blinds of East Greenbush and Budget Blinds of Hudson and Coxsackie, New York. They are been around. Budget Blinds have been in business for over 30 years, folks, 30 years. And the Budget Blinds of East Greenbush and Hudson and Coxsackie would like to help everyone out. And in the month of October, if you refer somebody to them in the month of October and that person ends up purchasing blinds, they've always been willing to give you a $50 gift card for that, and then or make a donation in your name to Wounded Warriors. But for the month of October, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, they are actually going to be making donations to the Women's Veteran Alliance. It's an organization that helps female veterans with either transitioning out of the service, maybe getting on their feet for the first time after time of service, or veteran women entrepreneurs who are looking and they're starting a business and they're looking for some additional support. Somebody like Mark to help coach them through things, all that kind of stuff. My buddy Eric Labonte, just like, I have everything right now on do not disturb. He forces a message through to be like, dude, I know you're doing your show, but I just make smoked salsa. And he has to send me a picture. I'm like, this is how like a bunch of food crackheads around here. But make sure you reach out to Budget Blinds of East Greenbush or Budget Blinds of Hudson and Coxsackie, New York. They're still running their 25% off sale this month. So reach out and they will help you to get your window coverings because they have some type of window treatment for every budget. Look at this. There he is. He's a pretty good cook. So, all right, Mark, the bar is open. We're all here. How are you, good sir?
I'm well, Sean, and thanks for having me. I get a great vibe. I love the background. I love the user experience already, and I like the tone.
So I appreciate you.
And by the way, I'm in Orlando, Florida. By the way.
You know, you're down there with all the snowbirds. They should all start flocking in any day now.
I know, and you'll love this even more because you're from New York. I'm originally from Boston.
Oh, look at that. Well, see, I'm from Baltimore originally, so I don't know. I'm a Baltimore guy. So, and I have to tell everyone, Mark is the first person to ever pick up that Ernest Hemingway is the picture over the bar. Nobody else ever picks up on this. He's the first person to ever go, wow, you got Hemingway over the bar. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, given his proclivities, maybe that's a double-edged sword, right? That I know him.
I mean, he knew how to put him down. I think it was Hemingway. Was he the one that was big Key West guy?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Hemingway was big Key West guy.
Big bounty hunter, big drinker.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were down I was down in Key West. Completely sidebar here for a moment. And there's a bar called Smoking Joe's or Smoky Joe's or something like that.
Mm.
And this place claims that it was the bar that Hemingway went to. Like this was the spot. They have a stool there that they say, well, this is where he used to hang out at, the whole 9 yards.
That's cool.
I mean, Key West is just a cool place. I love me some Key West, but we're not here to talk about Key West. We're here to talk about what Mark's got going on. So let me make sure I got your background right, Mark, because I'm pretty good at jacking these things up. So make sure you can fix me if I do.
Sure.
So 30 years working with people, helping them through situations. Mm-hmm. You've got your bachelor's in marketing from Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, you'll have to tell me what a certificate of excellence is, but you did that for you with UCF.
It's an entrepreneurship course.
Okay, so it's like a course in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, 8 weeks, and you give a presentation at the end, and it's pass-fail, and you get a certificate of excellence in entrepreneurship.
And Eric, if you're sticking around, because Eric worked with me at my last position, he founded and sold 2 staffing companies there, so you might get a little bit of inside knowledge here. So did I hit everything? What did I miss?
Yeah, I mean, professionally, I've recently transitioned into coaching. I'm not doing transactional placement anymore, because when I helped my 3 adult kids a few years back get work and then start their own companies, they all 3 came back to me and said, Dad, I don't think you're aware that you have a lot of information that you need to get in front of a lot more people, because you got us jobs like nobody's business. You helped us start companies like it was easy. And I don't think you give yourself enough credit. So I started to think, what would that look like? And I'm in the process of developing some coursework, and I'm doing trading time for money right now, but it's a couple hours with me if you're confused about what to do next professionally, and I can significantly change your outlook and your plan.
So I want to start with your career for a minute. I want to get into that, but I'm a junkie for recruiting. I still think from a financial standpoint, being a recruiter, if you're good at it, is the most addictive drug in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like the high of placing someone in a career that they can change their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric and I worked in a field where you weren't changing many lives. Anytime, any form of recruiting where I got to call you at 6 o'clock in the morning and make sure you got up to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't but then I was doing direct hire, and that's a different world. You know that's
Mm-hmm.
like, and so what got you into that world? I'm curious because that's like for a lot of people. I was just recently talking to somebody about sales. Like that world is either you're forced into that kind of environment because you feel like you have no other choice, or you're like me and I love anything sales related. I love sales training. I enjoy it, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting story. I didn't really even know what recruiting was. I was 26 years old and my girlfriend got pregnant, and I stepped up to the father role with boots on and said, okay, we gotta raise the bar, no pun intended. And so I went, and among other things, I visited my folks, and they had a couple guests over, and one of them was my mother's best friend, and she had just remarried this Australian guy. And over a glass of wine, I said, I'm seeking my purpose right now, and I'm a bit lost, and I got a sense of urgency. Do you mind if I ask, what do you do? And he said, yeah, I'm a recruiter for petrochemical engineers in Saudi Arabia. And I thought, well, we're going to have to unpack that. That's a loaded phrase. I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I on behalf of the Saudi Arabian oil companies, I go out into the world and I find specifically talented petrochemical engineers, and I put them in front of these companies and present them with offers if things work out. And the reason Saudi Arabia recruiting is a bit different, it's very, very unique because petrochemical engineers are very specific. And Saudi Arabia, if you're not from there, you probably don't want to live there for a long period of time. It's a very,
I can imagine that's not,
it's a challenging place for cultural reasons, weather reasons, all kinds of stuff. So they sign people up to 3-year contracts, and they give them a house fully furnished, and they give them a car and some other incidental benefits, and they pay them like 3 or 4 times what they pay petrochemical engineers here in the States. So it's a rich package. And I said, so how do you get paid? And he said, it's a percentage of their starting salary. I said, so what's an average fee per transaction? He said, it's about $100,000. And I thought to myself, I think I like the sound of this recruiting stuff. So I thought companies hired their own people. And then I was introduced to this whole world of agency recruitment. I got lucky and got stuck under a guy in a software engineering group. The company hired me in my first interview on the spot. And I started learning how to recruit. And we recruited for software engineers inside of the 128 belt in Boston. So really focused. And inside of that 128 belt, you probably know, are some of the best universities in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And so the talent pool there is rich. But it was 1987, 88. So stockbrokers were jumping out of windows and stuff. There were no jobs. And so we had to find the best software engineers in Boston and proactively take them out and say, do you want to upgrade your staff? I got the best guy in Cambridge. Very unique way of learning the business. And I look back on it and I'm grateful, because if you can do that, you can do anything in recruiting, So that's how it started. And I just found myself as the middleman and a negotiator. I've always been the mediator. I'm a middle child. I was the captain of all the teams I played on. I was kind of a young leader. And I really love this idea that you alluded to earlier, Sean. You're changing someone's life. I remember the first guy I got a job for, and he was an electrical engineer with 3 kids, single dad, and he was about to lose his home. And I got him a job. And I tell you, my feet were off the ground. I was floating for about a half a day after that. I thought, this is cool. Yeah, this is cool. That's how it began.
Now, I got to, and look, folks, recruiting it's the most rewarding. It's a different animal. You are rabbi, you are father, you are mother, you are the bully even. Mm-hmm. You've got to be everything to everyone, regardless of who you're talking to. If you want to make a lot of money, though, I know the first time I knew about it, I had a kid I put in the Marine Corps when I was recruiting there, mm-hmm. and his mother was the one in it. She was like, "Oh, I do executive recruiting." I'm like, "Well, what's that?" She mm-hmm. goes, "I go out and find executives for companies. I take them to lunch. I take them to dinner. We go out and we do stuff. And then I find new companies for them to work for." And I was like, very similar. I was like, "Well, how do you get paid?" "Well, I make 10% of their first year salary." Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I don't know what that is. I'm a young sergeant in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably at that time making 28,000 a year, and I was like, I'm a rock star right now.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, they make about 250,000 a year at the low end, and I get 25,000 off of that. And I'm like, you fucking serious? I'm putting kids in the Marine Corps fighting tooth or nail trying to teach them how to spell their own name some days, it feels like, and you're getting 25K for these guys. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then Eric just said, my first placement is still in the same company going on 5 years. He's no electrical engineer, but he's still thankful for me helping him. It's true. Now, Eric, like, I kid you not, Eric is dealing with, entry level, every so often, maybe something a little higher, but he's dealing with like manufacturers and in plants in a city that you could swing a dead cat and hit somebody that was employed by them.
Yeah.
Like he's in that world. But so you're doing this for other people, and you already talked about your sons. How many sons do you have? 2, 3, 4?
Two daughters and one son.
So 2 daughters, 1 son, but you've helped them to start companies. What was your catalyst though that you said, "Hey, I'm done working for other people"? Because I think this is a big part of what you do, and a lot of people don't understand this. It is a big transition to go from slave to a paycheck and turn around and go, yeah, I'm just going to piss caution to the wind because I think I'm smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, it's again, there was some circumstance there, and there was some innate. I in my experience, 35 years of being real close to starting companies and getting jobs and getting promotions and all that career development space. I think I was kind of destined for this. I think that this was something that I was meant to do. So, but I worked for a guy when I finished my 3 years with the first company I went to work for in New Hampshire. Then I went to work for a guy who I was introduced to, who I almost immediately identified as my mentor. And he said, I want to open up a company in Florida and I want you to help me do it. And I thought, Florida sounds pretty nice. I'm getting all this out of wedlock, having a kid, Irish Catholic noise. And I'm like, let's start fresh. Let's go where not everybody has an opinion on what I've done and what I'm about to do. And then we'll stay in touch and I'll come visit, but I got to go start my own life for my family. And so the timing was perfect. And I interviewed with this guy and he ended up saying, I'll give you $1,000, hop in your car, pack it up, move down there, find a place to stay and near the office. Here's the address of the office and start as soon as you can. And I already had 3 years of experience. So I kind of knew what I was doing. I wasn't green. And I worked his permanent placement firm up for about a year or so. And then he came to me one day and he said, you want to help me start a consulting firm? And I said, well, if you tell me what a consulting firm is, sure. And he told me, and it's basically placing people, but they're your employees and you're putting them out on projects and you're marking their hourly wage up. And so you get a margin per hour. Now we're talking passive residual income that's got a receivable on it. So the value of this company is much greater than a permanent placement company. And he said, I'll give you, a percentage of ownership. I'll fund the whole thing. I'll pay you, but you have to do all the work. And I will tell you exactly what the work is. And I said, that sounds like a good trade-off to me. So I proceeded in 4 years to get what probably was the equivalent of 2 MBAs while making 6 figures plus. And then he cut me a big fat check when he sold the company. So him selling the company, leaving me in the position of now I'm the manager of this particular division of the acquiring company. I tell you, Sean, it wasn't 3 months before I said, fuck this. I'm not working for anybody else. I particularly people that aren't even as smart as I am, And so the experience I had with him and then the circumstance of working for someone else, having worked for this guy, now I know this guy's brilliant because the guy I'm working for now is an idiot, and so I looked at my buddy who was working for this guy up in Boston, and he'd sold the company up there, and I said, let's throw down, man. Let's start. And people ask me, how'd you know? I just did. I just knew I was ready. My kids ask me all the time, were you scared? I'm like, nah, I don't remember being scared at all. I remember being really excited. And I think that speaks to the valuable mentorship that I got from this guy. He didn't just prepare me for my next job. He prepared me the ability to start my own company. And I got enough support from the people around me that I was able to do it. And I put in 15 grand. My buddy put in 15 grand, and we never put in another dime. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, we got it up to about 12 million in about 10 years. And then the next story is my contentious divorce, which burned that house down.
Don't they always? Don't they always?
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you talk about that. Another guy from my recruiting days just popped up. Shane, he's another phenomenal talent at what he does. But it's interesting to me because you talk about like you just knew that it was time to make that move. Because my wife recently asked me, she goes, "Well, did you wish you'd have started your own company sooner?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And we went through when I retired from the Marine Corps, from my time there and the 3 jobs I had after that, and how I was like, I needed each one of these as a building block to understand what I'm looking at today. Like you mentioned margins.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you 90% of employees do not know what their company's margins are, do not know how margins work, do not understand how valuable margins are to them. I was negotiating margins
mm-hmm.
and putting those things out. And that for what I do today really helped me as an owner to be able to say, I understand better now. Am I or am I not making a wage for myself to build my company bigger?
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. It's margins and cash flow. I remember learning early on, you'd call a large company, and we did business with large and small. We were in the software space. And so the guys that we placed were worth, 200,000, 300,000, 150 an hour, that kind of thing. And I learned very early from my mentor. He's like, "What are they telling you that the payment terms are?" And they say they want to pay us in 90 days. He said, "Say no. Say we need to be paid immediately upon receipt. We're a small company and we can't hang out there for 90 days. And we need to send you weekly invoices." And if you couldn't get that done with the chief financial officer or the chief operations officer, there was always a young lady in accounts payable, and she didn't give a shit about policy or procedure, and nobody watched over her anyway. So I would say to her, "Hey, I'm going to be the one sending the invoice. Are you going to be the one receiving the invoice?" And she'd say yes, or she'd say, "No, you got to call so-and-so." And I'd call so-and-so, and I'd make best friends with so-and-so. And I'd say, "Would you do me a favor? I got some pressure from the boss. We're a small company. We're just starting out. Anyway, I can send weekly invoices and you can pay us upon receipt." She goes, "Sure, let me just key up in the system." So everyone else that's playing with these guys is doing 90 days, and I'm doing 1 week, And then you turn around to the consultants in fair game and say, "I want to pay you bi-weekly every 2 weeks." So now I'm collecting my money before I'm paying my consultants. I mean, it's magical if you can do it. It's so simple,
Just ask. I don't want to give away too many secrets because I have my own business, but I know so many people in that industry. Well, I'm not in that industry, so I'll give away secrets. I know so many people in that industry that they're constantly trying to tiptoe around the money side to it.
Yeah.
And I was always like, "No, give me my money."
Yeah.
Like, I did the work for you. Go get me paid. Well, they've got some wells where I get my water. Go get my money.
Yeah.
And I learned that from a good friend of mine, Norm, who was a CFO for Fox TV in Philly for a while. And he's down in New Orleans now. He's my accountant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget. I was young. You'll appreciate this, Mark. And we're going to get forward into your stuff, but I think you'll appreciate it. I was probably like 27-year-old, again, young Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And we trained in Aikido together. And we're at the dojo and we're talking about something. And he goes, "Murph, let me tell you something." He said, "Your father can die today. If your bills ain't paid in the business world, don't nobody give a shit." And I went, And I was like, he had never talked to me like this. Like we trained together. I choked him out before, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And he said this to me. He goes, but the minute your bill's paid, they'll tell you sorry for your loss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, brother, that was told to me in 2001, 2002 timeframe.
Yeah.
Post 9/11, I know that. And it has stuck with me ever since then. This mindset of, don't tell me your problems.
Mm-hmm.
Pay me my money.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It makes me think of a story in the .com bubble. We were dealing with all these startup software companies, and it was tenuous. And I had a relationship with this chief financial officer. His name was Joe. I'll leave his last name out of it. We had a great relationship, and we were transparent with one another. He's like, no, their product was excellent, and they had some distribution and shipping issues, and there was hope. Whereas there were a lot of companies at that point in time, they were just falling over. There was hope here still. And I remember calling him up. He owed us 150 grand, which in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not a lot of money to some, but for me at the time, it was a lot of money. Yeah. And I called him up at home on Christmas Eve. And I said, Joe, I'm getting ready to knock back a few and punch out for the day. I just got to ask you something man to man. Can I ask you something man to man? He goes, sure, Mark. I said, am I going to get my fucking money? And he said, yes, you are. And I said, Merry Christmas, Joe. Talk to you next week. I got a million stories like that.
But you know what, Mark? Those stories are what feeds us into, and again, folks, if you're listening, if you're just tuning into Mark and I, it's 7pillarsglobal.com. And it's just like it sounds, the number 7 pillars, PILLARS global.com. Mark has a background that I love to talk to people about, because I think we also, no different than Marines. I think Marines make great leaders. We make great, if you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, guess what? Robert Kiyosaki was in Vietnam as a pilot, and he tells you the only reason he joined the Marine Corps was to learn leadership skills.
Yeah.
And then he moved on from there. So you sell it. Now, this one that we were talking about, you had the divorce. That shit will burn. I don't care what you got. That shit will burn everything to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
It always does. We lose every time. I don't care what you built.
Yeah. It's, that's a compelling story that in hindsight, I can find a lot of humor in. I came out with my sense of humor and great relationships with my 3 kids, and I got custody of them as my own attorney, and I'm not an attorney. So that'll tell you how screwed up that circumstance was. And learned a lot, gained a good bit of humility, which I think is a wonderful trait. And, when you're 27-year-old a Marine, humility is not one of the things you're looking for. You learn that later.
I didn't have any of it. None. Zero.
So, yeah. And then, after he sold the company and I found out I didn't want to go to work for somebody, I did that thing with my friend, and we rock and rolled for quite some time. And another interesting story there was when we hit 10 million, and I think 10 million is kind of a figure, no matter what the business, it became a different business. We had been selling and recruiting and building relationships, but on the back end, cash flow reporting, P&Ls, balance sheets, accounting, we didn't have that buttoned up. And we were also trying to serve too many different markets. And we brought a consultant in. I remember we paid him 10 grand a month. And both of my partners are like, we're going to give a guy 10 grand a month and he's not selling anything? That's scary, man. And he saved us. And he did 2 things. Stop trying to be everything to everybody. Pick your spot and be the expert, be the best, charge the most. And you got to know when your money's coming in and where it's coming from. You can't just rely on generating revenue. And that's when the economy was slowing down and people were hanging on to their money for longer periods of time. So he came in just at the right time. And I learned from that experience too, that you gotta get help from other people. Nobody can do this shit alone. You need support. You need a good partner. You need a good coach. You need a good wife. You need support. You can't do it alone,
Well, that kind of and I think that feeds right into where you are today. So you go from, and I'm a firm believer in, and it's so funny to me. I just recently heard this. People are willing to tip a waiter or a waitress, regardless of how good or bad they are, at least 18%.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll get upset for paying your broker a 3% fee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Your broker's going to make you money. A guy like Mark, if you listen to what he has to say, is going to put your life on a path and put you towards making money. But you'll pay the barista at Starbucks on a $5 coffee, you'll give her a $3 tip. Well, guess what, folks? Do the math. You've definitely overtipped that motherfucker.
You know,
So,
you got to look at, you kind of have to look at things in context. You have to understand all the moving parts. I you know, both of my daughters had made the decision to buy coaching expertise, to the tune of like 5, 10, 15 grand. Okay. And like a significant investment. And the struggle of should I or shouldn't I was in it with them. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't, but I think that you're both pretty smart. And if you think that you should, you probably should. And I got to tell you, Sean, both of them, but one of them in particular, she cracked 6 figures a couple months after getting that coach. And she's tripled that revenue in the last 2 years. I mean, she
hired a coach. She hired a coach.
She hired a coach. Yeah. I coached them both for a while. And then, you know, dads can only get
You're still dad.
So you're still dad. You know, I could be brilliant dad, but I'm still dad. They want an objective third party, and they need an objective third party. So take the emotion out of it, put the objectivity into it. But I believe in coaching, and that's why when people say to me, I can't afford it, I'm like, well, I guess I haven't explained it well enough, because the earning power that I can give you, the opportunities that I can introduce you to, the confidence that I can bring to your professional game with information and answers to questions, it'll astound you, you know. And if you're stuck, then you're probably, what are the emotions? Fearful, anxious, resentful, nervous, scared. They're all the negative emotions. What if I can take all those emotions in like a matter of hours, confident, competent, specific plan of action, hopeful? I mean, it's night and day, you know, it's 100%. Night and day. Yeah.
And you know what, listen, I'm a big listener to books because I spend a lot of time in my van, going and seeing clients. But you know, I love this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Have you read that book yet?
No, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Great book. But he gets very into the emotional brain versus the intellectual brain. And everything you're talking about is people using their emotional brain, which controls 90% of our lives, instead of their intellectual brain. Because if I told you intellectually, hey, I've got someone who can get you promoted, increase your income, show you how to move to a new position, and for the most part, make your life more comfortable as a person, intellectually, you would say, well, yeah, I want that. You know, that makes sense. But when I say, and this isn't, folks, this is not what Mark costs. I'm just throwing out a number, just to throw a number out. Please don't be like, hey, this dude's like way out of his mind. But if I said to you, hey, but this is going to cost you $100,000 to do this, well, emotionally, be like, that's a lot of money. I don't know if I can handle that. I mean, you will zip yourself up emotionally.
Yeah.
But you never take a second to go, well, how long do I have to pay that? Well, no, it's $100,000 over the next 100 years. Well, that's nothing.
Yeah.
So what's to get into what you're doing then, Mark? So, I mean, you've coached your kids. You have a very close relationship with your children. As a dad, this is from a dad of a divorced household who I would wish all my kids live with me. This is for you.
Did you ask me a question?
No, I just cheered. I played the applause. You can't hear my applause.
Oh, I can't hear the applause. I'm like,
oh, you didn't hear the applause.
I think he froze.
I gave you applause there.
Thank you.
You know, but it's a huge thing. So, what is your process? What makes the Mark process different than me going and talking to Cleo online and finding out my fortune? What makes you unique in what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sean. I think about it all the time. And the more that I talk to people, I recently went out to, I don't know, 10 or 15 guys that I've worked with before, gals that I've worked with before that have been customers or employees or colleagues of mine. They've been connected to the money in some capacity. It wasn't just a platonic relationship. And I said, can you tell me, like, send me an email, just take 5 minutes and say, if I asked you, what do you think my superpower is? And it was a very interesting exercise. I recommended to do it by somebody. I don't remember who it was, but I was astounded by the response. I wasn't surprised because it made sense to me. But the thread was the way I communicate, right? You are a thoughtful communicator, and then all the adjectives to describe how I communicate: articulate, thoughtful, empathetic, not condescending, clear, concise, kind. It was like, and then the other thread through the emotions was empathy. You listen so well, and it's so clear that you give a shit. You're not just playing me. You're not just talking to me to appease me. You actually care, and you can hear me. And I think I'm doing that in a sea of transactional mediocrity. So it stands out, you know? As I've been contemplating that question for now a few years, that's what comes out when I'm asked that question. So if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I wonder from an exercise standpoint, I wonder, Eric, if you're still watching, or Shane, I would love anyone who's got a profession like that. I know there's a few people watching us right now. I would love to hear some feedback from them, what they think others would say about them, or for them to try it, when they get to work tomorrow, like, hey, I'm working on me, just reach out to like 3 to 4 of your coworkers and just say, hey, do you think I got a superpower? And if so, could you just tell me what it is? I'm working on myself.
Yeah.
Just to get that feedback.
It's a good call, Sean. I think it's a really good exercise. Everybody can benefit from it. And I think that it also gives you language for your copy and your advertising and your marketing, right? And it's not coming from you. It's coming from people who worked with you. So it's rather objective. It's not subjective. And the other thing, I got a couple people commenting on, I think it's part of the reason because you raised 3 kids on your own, 2 of whom were daughters on your own. Your empathy comes from there. Your listening skills comes from that. Your sensitivity comes from that. And you don't know me very well, but if you hung around with me, sensitive is not one of the words you would immediately bring to the table, right? It's kind of in my back pocket and it comes out when I need it, but it's big, burly, stupid guy, So sensitivity was kind of funny to hear, but I appreciate it.
Mungo would sandwich. I would sandwich. Yeah, no, I understand. Well, earlier when you mentioned the Irish Catholic Boston, I was going to ask you if the mother of your first child was a Southie, and that's why you had to get out of there.
No, she was in Charlestown, which is just as much south. That's where all the the movie The Town,
Townies.
Ben Affleck. Yeah. That's where they shot that. That's where all the Irish mobsters lived. And she was born in Dublin, actually. And
wow,
Boston. So she was pure Mick, and I was mostly Mick. And so, yeah.
You'll appreciate this story. I was on recruiting duty and was at my first ever, it's called an 8412 conference. It's career recruiters in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting with my Master Guns, one of my mentors, Master Guns MacArthur, and he goes, Gunny, I want to introduce you to, and I might have even been a staff sergeant at the time. I want to introduce you to Master Guns. I don't even remember the guy's name. Mm-hmm. He goes, how you doing, Staff Sergeant Murphy? He goes, what's your full name? I said, Sean Patrick Murphy. He goes, you want to move stations? I'm like, why? He goes, I'm going to put you in South Boston at South Boston Station. He goes, the mothers will walk their children into the room when they hear your name and give you their children, and things will fall off of trucks into your office every day. Because I was much thinner, this hair, and he was like, they will walk them into your office and drop. He just, you want to come work for me? And that was the first time I had ever heard that. I'm like, Boston, a different animal completely.
It is, but the Irish are too. Because when I went to school at Notre Dame, ended up working in Chicago, which is like an hour and 15-minute drive. I did all my interviewing there, and there's a huge Irish population in Chicago. I mentioned I was asked where I went to school a few times. I remember renting a car, and they were out of the car that I wanted, and I couldn't afford the one that was a 2 grades up at the time. And I can't remember how it came up, but the guy asked me, well, where'd you just graduate from? I said, Notre Dame. He goes, hang on a second. He goes and gets me the 2 upgrades and just washes it off the books, you know? And I had people offering me jobs, Irish people in Chicago, in accounting. I was a marketing major. They didn't care. They just wanted more Notre Dame people. So the Boston connection, the Irish connection, it's strong and it's unique and it's often fucking hilarious, you know?
All right. Left turn question for you. How did you feel when the College Football Hall of Fame moved from South Bend to Atlanta? Did you give it any thought?
Yeah, I didn't respond to that at all. My challenge with them is they can't seem to win anything on a consistent basis. And they're doing some things that aren't necessarily Catholic. And but that didn't bug me. That didn't really rock my world.
See, I was in the Hall of Fame in South Bend. And then I was in Atlanta when they opened the Hall of Fame in Atlanta. Like I was there that weekend.
Yeah.
So I've seen both of them. And personally, I think it needs to go back to South Bend. Not that it was a bad building or anything.
Yeah.
But I don't see Atlanta. I mean, Georgia Tech's amazing. If you've never been over that campus, it's an amazing campus.
Yeah.
It's next to Varsity, which is my favorite fast food in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like I don't see Atlanta and think college football.
Yeah, Notre Dame has a mysticism about it, a tradition about it. It's a really cool place, and it's all South Bend, Indiana is Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nothing else there. You know, and I just saw a recent picture of some of the projected building that's going into this $90 million construction effort or whatever, and the place is looking spectacular. And I haven't been back in a while, but you can't step on that campus and not get a little chill.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who hasn't watched Rudy and just been like, I should go to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But we follow, they're called Wake Up Sports Podcast, buddies over there. And then we were talking about the fact that Notre Dame's still an independent. And they were like, oh, they should join a conference. Notre Dame will never join a conference. As long as NBC, Notre Dame Broadcasting Channel, exists and is going to pay them an absolutely ridiculous amount of money for every Irish Catholic to root for Notre Dame, they ain't never going nowhere. Not at all.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that they will. And maybe they shouldn't, you know, maybe they shouldn't. It's kind of it's a cool thing to be that unique.
I agree with you. So, I mean, I didn't mean to make a left turn there. I was just thinking about Notre Dame and South Bend.
No sweat. Love talking about Notre Dame.
Have you ever been to Goshen, Indiana?
Probably.
You want to talk about a scary place? They boast that the Amish there can trace their roots back to the original 100 settlers.
Wow.
But guess what? That gene pool's super shallow. Super shallow. You can see it when you're there. It's real, but it's also some of the best food I ever had. The best chicken a la king or chicken and biscuits, whatever you want to call it, that I ever had was in a restaurant in Goshen, Indiana. Yeah, and it was an Amish restaurant, which I thought was very interesting.
They're an interesting people, the Amish. They sure are.
I watched a thing the other day where an Amish girl was using an electric lantern, and the guy was like, "That's electricity. How are you able to use that?" She goes, "No wire. It's battery powered." He was like, "Ain't you some shit?" But I digress because we're getting close to the end here. So people are able to contact you, Mark, again through the number 7 pillarsglobal.com. But what is your vetting process that people should expect in the first step to even determine if you want to coach them?
Yeah. So right now, and I've got some things in the works and more of an assessment process that I'm going to charge for. Right now, I present my calendar on my website as well as a number of other places it's a Calendly link. It's a 30-minute slot. And I ask people, tell me what your biggest challenge is or anything that might be helpful for the call. They jump on my calendar and we do a Zoom call or a phone call for 30 minutes. And I can tell in 10 minutes whether I can help them or not. And then I can tell in 20 or 30 minutes how I can help them. So at the end, what people get 99 out of 100 times is, I can help you or I can't help you. And this is why. And if I can help you, this is what I think that's going to look like. And right now I usually say, I charge this amount of money per hour and I don't spend more than 2 or 3 hours, because I'll spend an hour with somebody, give them all kinds of thinking to do, all kinds of work to do, all kinds of polishing to do, and inner, self-awareness exercises. And then the second hour, we go over what they've accomplished and I move them to the next level. Like I said, what do you do? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Let's craft your story. No resumes yet, no tactics yet. Let's figure all this shit out. And if they don't choose to work with me, I usually give them at least a couple of tips, either about their resume or their LinkedIn profile, that they can put to use just in good faith. And I'd say 50% of the people come back. And then I've had people come back after years. But what I want to be offering people is the product that I have in the works, which is a 6-week coaching program that's a few grand, and it's much deeper, with supplemented with workbooks and workshops. And we have a community. It's pretty classic online learning experience, but real deep dive. And I'm also getting some people reaching out to see if I do any leadership training. The first guy that asked me, because I write a lot on LinkedIn and my writing is getting better, and I'm trying to get more authentic and funnier and more interesting. And I'm getting a lot of traction on that. And I had 2 people reach out to me yesterday, leaders in the IT space, asking me about leadership training, and I'm in negotiation with one. So I said, full transparency, I don't have a course yet, but I got 30 years of experience up here. I've been teaching leaders for 30 years. So that was fun, because when he got on the phone with me, he goes, man, I feel like I know you. I've been watching your videos and reading your stuff for the last 3 months. I'm like, well, that's cool. That cake is half baked. Let's go.
Well, I love the fact that you're willing to tell people no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna coach you. I can't, for whatever that particular reasoning is. And I think that's a hard line that a lot of coaches aren't willing to take. They're like,
yeah,
hey, sure, I'll go ahead and coach you. Come on over.
Yeah.
And it just gives that industry. You do a lot. Do you do a lot of networking, Mark? Like networking events, like virtual networking? A lot?
Don't do events. Don't do events. After 30 years, Sean, I got a lot of people that I can reach out to that can plug me into their networks again. When I was doing beta testing on this course that I'm in the middle of, I got 10 guys on the phone, 10 people on the phone, that all I did was say, I want your opinion on this. Absolutely. Just send me an invite. And, I got 10 pieces of feedback. So I did a lot of networking. I certainly have spent a lot of time reaching out to a lot of different people, but I've got a pretty solid network now. And I'm not even leveraging LinkedIn to the extent that I could. So that's in the works as well. I got a few thousand followers on LinkedIn.
It just feels like during COVID, the coaches were you go to these networking things, and the coaches had become the new, not real estate agents, but financial planners. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you go to any of those networking events, it's like, hey, here's my card. I can go ahead and invest your money for you.
Yeah. It's interesting, Sean. I think that one of the things I told my kids when they started their businesses, I said, you want to be, in demand. You want to have a constant line of prospects and warm leads. Do exactly what you say you're going to do. And if you can't do something, don't say that you can. Then you're in the top 5%. I don't care what the profession is. And if you think about that, if that's true of doctors, that's pretty scary,
Your liver?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I think that's one of the things that I get feedback on a lot is you never promise me something you can't deliver. You don't bullshit me. You're authentic. You're transparent. You don't kiss my ass. And if somebody wants their ass kissed, I'm the wrong guy.
I had one. God, Plug your ears if you have sensitive ears for a moment. I had one of my Marines. It was the greatest line I've ever heard in my life. He was at this house trying to get this kid to go to boot camp, and the grandfather was there. He said something to the grandfather. He's like, "You're just trying to kiss my ass, aren't you?" He goes, "Look, sir, I might kiss a little ass, but no, I ain't gonna suck no dick. So this is the deal." And he's like, the kid, everybody was like, "Here, sign here."
Yeah.
And they signed because he was like, "I'm not playing games with you."
Yeah.
That's probably one of the best things. Now I got to ask this question for Nate because this is Nate's question. He always asks this question of all of our guests. I always just have to reframe it a little bit. So you mentioned hitting that $10 million mark, being a $10 million business. Was there a celebratory meal for that?
No. We did celebrate when we sold the company.
All right. What was the meal? I got to ask. What was the celebratory meal?
I want to say it was Ruth Chris and a bunch of steaks and hard liquor. So
you know what I love from Ruth Chris? Everybody loves Ruth Chris steak. You can't beat their steak.
Yeah.
But you know what I love? Their asparagus.
Oh yeah.
Ruth Chris asparagus is freaking amazing.
I love the huge sides that you like.
Yes.
4 or 5 guys can split one, and you get like 5 or 6 of them, and everybody gets a steak, and then there's cigars afterwards. Yeah, that's a pretty cool evening.
We just opened our first Ruth Chris here in Smallbany, and I love Ruth Chris.
Yeah.
See, I'm going to ask this question because I just got to ask it real quick. Living in Boston, did you ever go to in the financial district sandwich shop called Al's?
Not that I remember.
You don't understand this. This is the greatest sandwich shop in all of Boston. I want you to know this right now. If your kids are still in Boston.
There's so many good places for food in Boston, though, dude. You know that, and I would love to know how you got introduced to Al's because I think you probably need to know somebody that makes the recommendation. But if I go back, what's that?
For Amtrak. I worked for Amtrak, and we pulled into South Station, and it's just up from South Station.
Oh yeah, I know where South Station is for sure. Yeah, so much good food there, man. My dad still lives there, and my brother lives in Western Mass, but my kids are down here with me.
Well, you ask your dad, tell him to go to Al's. It's only open Monday through Friday in the financial district. You get a chicken salad sub with provolone and Italian hots.
Nice.
It's the best.
That's
the fat kid in me. So
I am, thanks to you, I'm now hungry, Sean.
You're welcome. And you're in Orlando where there's everything is just Mickey Mouse food.
It's gotten a lot better. It really has become a real city over the last 10 or 15 years. And our governor is doing a good job. And it's a nice place to be living right now.
It is. I just thought every time I was in Orlando, I just thought is there anything that's like a legit restaurant, like mom and pop, or is it all like tourist food just to keep them happy?
It used to be. I mean, there's International Drive is probably 10 miles away from me. You can't hear anything in my yard. I live in a non-traditional neighborhood with old and new homes, and it's quiet and there's lots of birds. And I don't spend any time. I think I've been to Disney once in 30 years, and that's when my kids were young, and I hated it. That tourist thing does nothing for me. There's a lot more to Orlando than that.
Eric's ready to trade away we've got the Joker right now.
Yeah.
If you ever were to see our governor, she looks like when DC did the Flashpoint Joker as a female, and she looks just like her.
Every time she opens her mouth, I'm aghast at how she got that position. I know she kind of jumped into it when the other guy got canned, but
Lord Commander Cuomo.
Yeah,
Lord Commander.
Yeah, Jesus. You want to talk politics? We'll do another show, Sean.
We'll do a whole show on that. Listen to me. I'll be honest. I don't love yours any more than any of the rest of them. But my favorite thing with this one is when she goes, "I had no idea of the things he was involved in. I did 20 years in the Marine Corps. As a leader, if I didn't know what was going on in my house, my boss would have ate my lunch and I'd have lost my job. They'd have fired me and sent me off to go, count T-shirts somewhere. It would have never worked out for.
Those kinds of comments, no matter what. I mean, I find them so disingenuous. And then you go from disingenuous to, oh, you actually think I'm stupid enough to buy that? Well, fuck
Thank you.
You know,
and it's a leadership thing. We couldn't do that, and that's one of the things that kind of want to wrap this back up into what you're teaching from a coaching standpoint, the accountability side. Real leaders are accountable for their actions and their people's actions.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just be like, oh, I didn't know he was doing it. It's my fault. Because if I did that with my kids, if I was like, oh, I didn't know my kid was setting matches on your front porch, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. That self-accountability thing is what really is missing. And I used to tell people that worked for me, you can come into my office anytime. Okay. And it's open door policy, but you just bring me a problem and I'm going to ask you to go back out and come back with some solutions. We might not use your solutions, but I want to know you put some thought into it, and you're just coming in here to put a problem on my back and expect me to fix it. Okay. That's not the way this shit works, And it's one of my favorite qualities. One of my insisted upon qualities is self-accountability. I don't want you blaming anybody. I don't want you blaming anything, even if it is someone else or something else's fault. I don't care. That doesn't fly.
We're almost done here, but I wanted to ask you a question. I'm glad you brought that up. From a coaching standpoint, is that something you can even coach, is accountability?
I used to joke with people that would say stupid things on the sales floor. Give me your parents' phone number. I need to call them up and we need to fix this. Some of this stuff is just, we get so much from our parents, good and bad, so much. And we spend a lifetime trying to pick out the bad stuff and get rid of it and throw gas on the good stuff. I don't know, Sean. I think you can with some people. All this leadership talk I've been having, it's like, are people born leaders? Yes, I believe they are. Can people be taught to be leaders? I think they can be taught to be better leaders, but I think you have to have some innate leadership qualities. I don't know. It's an interesting discussion.
See, that I could have a whole conversation on that too. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk about, because I think people are either thrust into leadership roles or they desire it, and it has to be trained.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe in the born leader. You might be thrust into a role or you desire it, but you can't be born it, because there's a lot of bad kings in this world. There's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah. I know where you're coming from. A quick story on that. When I was 6 and I was in Little League, my dad was the coach. I wore one of his white T-shirts to practice one day. So I had this big white T-shirt on, and I didn't remember this until he told me. He said, "Mark, do you remember that the next day at practice, every other kid on that team wore his father's white T-shirt? They were looking up to you from day one."
Oh, and wow.
And that's so I think there's a little bit of everything in that leadership space, but I was also taught to be a leader by my father.
So there was your dad showed you, and I agree with Shane. You can forge that leadership. Exactly. Mm-hmm. You can see it, you can mold it, you can work with it. Look, folks, if you're looking for Mark and you want to know what he's got going on, first off, he's very active on LinkedIn, and Mark's last name is spelled Aylward. I butcher last names, Mark. I'm so bad at it. It's always been my vein.
Sean, everyone fucks that name up. Everyone.
It's like I fuck it up like polio. So reach out to Mark. You can also, again, all of his links are on his website, 7 pillars, PILLARS global.com. Shane, thanks for hanging out. Eric, Nate, everybody who's been hanging out with this whole time. Make sure you give Mark a follow. If you're finding us through Mark or Mark through us, make sure when you get out there, you give him a follow on everything. Make sure you give us a follow. That follow, that like, that 5-star rating that you give us on whatever social media, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be going on to Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this at, it matters. It's how the algorithms work. It's how we get found. It's how Mark gets found. It's how Mark can look. He's retired. This is a new career path for him. You need to feed this man. If you don't do this, you're causing this man. There's starving podcasters in this world, and you need coaches, and you need to take care of them. But make sure you do that for him. And look, you can follow us on anything and everything. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Reach out to us. Let us know what you got going on. If you know somebody that you think would be a great guest, please reach out and let me know. I'll have no problem in having a conversation with them, letting them know what we have going on. Now, Mark, this is episode like 203. If I'm keeping track of everything, I lose track so much.
Nice.
But I know you've listened to like all 202 of them. You binged it, you sucked it all in. So you had all the knowledge. But to me, this is one of the most important parts of our show, which is at the end of every episode. And don't log off on me after we get done. We need to talk for just a moment. Okay. The guest always gets the final word. So, Mark, what is the final word for tonight?
I was just thinking, I didn't mention at all that my buddy and I, Jim, we do a podcast as well, and it's called the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. And I think you would enjoy it, Sean. And I think your audience, based on how you describe them, might get a kick out of it too. We don't really have an agenda, but we have a lot of fun, and usually we can pull some good advice out of it as well. So maybe I can leave people with that idea.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.